So this is the Beauty Starts Within mental health conversation. We are at the Homewood Science Center in Homewood, Illinois. Oh, we gotta have to mute that, right? All right, hold up. Otherwise, we're gonna be getting the echo. All right, I think we're good. Take two. This is what live things are like, right? All right. So welcome to the Beauty Starts Within mental health conversation. We are at the Homewood Science Center in Homewood, Illinois. My name is Jacob Moore, and I am joined by this illustrious group of individuals who have volunteered to spend some time talking about mental health today. I'm going to introduce everybody, but before we get started, I just want to say something really important to you all and everybody out there who's in live stream land. If anything comes up for you today that is triggering, that makes you feel big emotions, that bumps into something ugly from your past, it's okay to step out. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to ask someone for help or to talk to someone. It's all okay. It's a safe space here for you all, and I just want you all to know that however you need to express that, or if you need to take a break, that's okay. All right. Just do me a favor and make sure if you're stepping out, just talk to someone so that you're not going through it alone. That's the whole point of all this today, is so that we're not going through these struggles alone. Okay. All right. Thank you. So here on my left, I have Tiara Jackson, who is the co-founder and the CEO of Beauty Starts Within Cosmetics, or you may hear us reference it as BSW Cosmetics. And this whole thing was your brainchild. You decided to get us together.
Yeah, so I just kind of felt the need to have a dialogue and just a safe space surrounding mental wellness and suicide prevention. For anybody who doesn't know, September is National Suicide Prevention Month. And this cause itself is just really dear to my heart. I'm not an expert or a professional. I'm just a survivor on my own. So I know just how hard it can be and how alone you can feel when you're dealing with things like this. So that's kind of just where my idea for this came from. And I just wanted to offer everybody a safe space. So the reason I kind of wanted to set it up in this like circle is to promote and engage in conversation and dialogue. So I don't want it to just be us like talking at you, like, you know, engage and dialogue, talk with us. So yeah.
Right on. And that goes for anybody who is watching this on social media. Y'all out there, you have a chat wherever you're at. Feel free to type any questions or comments or thoughts in that chat. And we have people out there who I'll introduce in a second who will respond to you. Over on the right here, we have Logan Reister, who is a person who is near and dear to my heart. She's a psychiatric nurse and our support coordinator at NoStigmas. We've been hanging out now for
7 years.
7 years. And Logan is just like, she's just one of those like wonderful human beings, and I appreciate it. So thank you for being here, Logan.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, and Deshaun, you, my friends, are an economist apparently, and you are statistical analysis at ISS, and a recent graduate from ISU in August.
Yes, so I'm just here as a mental health supporter and advocate for mental health. It's something I've dealt with my whole life, so I just feel like it's important to keep the conversation present so everybody can be aware of it.
All right, I appreciate that. And like I said, my name is Jacob Moore. I'm the founder of an organization called NoStigmas, which is a mental health nonprofit. We come from a lived experience perspective. That means we have been there, whether it's depression, anxiety, suicide, people from our community are experiencing. That's the perspective that we're coming from. And I personally lost my birth father to suicide when I was 6 years old. I grew up with anxiety and depression, had suicidal thoughts myself when I was in high school, and have had a long journey with mental health to kind of get to this place now where I feel well and able to be an advocate. So that's what we're talking about today. That's the perspective that we're coming from. So like Tiara said, we want to kind of engender a conversation with you all. So if you have questions, thoughts that come up as we're talking today, please feel free, shout it out. Likewise, for anybody who is at home watching, type it in the chat. We have Lance Morlung, who is our new marketing coordinator. He is an amazing human being who happens to live in Italy. So he's like hanging out there on the other side of the ocean, way past his bedtime, supporting us. And then we have 3 interns from the DePaul nursing program. We have Taylor, we have Caitlin, and Kylie, who are all monitoring social media. So there are people out there digitally as well that can answer questions that you have. So with that being said, you've posed some questions for us today, and I want to kind of dig into those as well as kind of having a conversation. Before we get into those questions, can you share a little bit more about your story? Whatever you're comfortable with. I'd love to hear a bit more about your journey and how it led you here.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I've kind of dealt with anxiety and depression for a really long time, but not really knowing like what it was. Even when I was younger, like my anxiety, what it looks like is like racing thoughts and like my heart starts to beat really, really fast. And like I've always dealt with that, but it wasn't until I was in college that I really like was diagnosed and like kind of started figuring out like how to wrestle with it and like my own coping mechanisms. But I feel like it really like got to its worst. My senior year in high school, I was a cheerleader. That was a really big part of my life, and then I got injured. So my senior season was just kind of ruined. I feel like that kind of started the depression. And then college, the stresses of college came eventually, was just added to it and added to it. And like I said, it was something that I wasn't really diagnosed with or didn't really understand until really like these past like 2 to 3 years. So everything kind of just kept building and building. And me being the type of person I am, I just kept trying to do more and more and more and more and more until I was just kind of overwhelming myself. And just got to a point where I really wasn't happy with life in general, but was still kind of just forcing myself to do all these things that I convinced myself I was responsible for and that I had to do for other people. And it just brought me into a really dark place where I didn't see any purpose for myself here. So what it took for me was to kind of step back and kind of put myself first for a second, because I was doing so many things because I thought other people wanted this from me or were expecting it from me or just needed this from me, whereas I wasn't really putting my mental health and my like wellness and just calamity, bless you Gwen, first. So I made an attempt. It was September 27, 2019. And since then, I've been like kind of just falling back in love with the simple joys of life and the things that bring me happiness. I ended up taking a semester off following that, which, as I mentioned, I'm the type of person who just was doing things because I felt like other people like needed it from me, expected it from me. And one of those things was like, I knew I hated the school I was at and the place that I was at and the state I was at, but I was like, I started college here, I have to stay here. My parents are expecting me to stay here. We've already started this like journey here. I have to do this, I have to. And I just had to like step back and think like, okay, like what does Tiara want? Not what does Tiara think everybody else wants Tiara to do, you know? And yeah, I I'm still here.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you're still here. We appreciate it. And you're coming up on an anniversary, right?
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years. How do you feel about that?
I feel a lot of different things. Empowered is one, powerful is two. And I feel like I'm a testament for other people, which is part of why I really wanted to do this event. And why even like last year is when, like my anniversary last year of my attempt is when I kind of opened up and like shared a little bit of what I was going through, because nobody really knew aside from like my family. But I did, like, I made a post about it because I just felt like it's something that people don't talk about. So I feel like if I could shift that dialogue or create that dialogue and just help other people to realize, like, this isn't just a me thing, because that's what I was thinking in my head.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm so alone. Nobody else like will understand. Nobody cares. That's just what your brain, like the racing thoughts will tell you. But you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. And people do care.
Yeah. That's it. And there are so many of us who had these types of experiences. I can say from my own experience, you're certainly not alone in feeling like you don't have that purpose, like you talked about, or feeling like there's no hope or no way out, or that there are all these expectations on you. And I love that you shared that, like, the path to getting to where you want to be was doing less, taking that burden off, taking time off of school so you could focus on you and your self-care. That's really hard to admit, like in this world, right? That we need to take a break, and sometimes doing less means you get more from you.
And I also definitely like acknowledge and recognize that I have the luxury to be able to do this, and a lot of people don't. So that's another thing that I just want to call attention to. Not everybody can say, I'm gonna take a week off,
Right.
because I just can't do this right now, you know? But it's important to, if you can't take a whole week, at least take a minute, something for yourself.
Well, we often use the expression, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So if we are drained, like how can we possibly serve others? So, those people who have families and kids and people depending on, that's why we talk about that conversation of self-care coming first, so that we have the strength, the capacity to be able to help support others. So you talked about that, kind of leading up to that. Logan, I want to ask you, when we're talking about those symptoms of someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis or some type of mental illness, can you share a little bit about what some of those signs and symptoms look like?
The signs and symptoms can definitely look different for different people. So this isn't a kind of a catch-all for them, but the biggest thing to look for is changes. That's really the main thing. If someone is normally bubbly and happy and they're all of a sudden not, that could be a sign that something isn't happening, or something is happening within them that they don't want to talk about. Being withdrawn, being isolative, making big changes in their life that they usually wouldn't. Asking for help indirectly is another big thing that I see a lot of the time, with people not really understanding or knowing what to say or how to say it, but they want to reach out. So I would say that those are the very big things that you want to look for, even if you don't know what you're looking for, just making sure to be attentive to the person and really looking for those minor signs and symptoms, of their mood, of their actions. Those can say a lot more than someone actually telling you what's going on.
So there's, I think a lot of people look at those behavior changes as like a negative or trying to get attention or, something like that. Can you speak to that? We often talk about like a cry for help, right? And sometimes that looks like unwanted, undesirable behavior, right?
Absolutely. That's why I said that these things manifest themselves in a lot of different ways. A lot of people think, oh, you're saying these things to get attention, or you're doing these things to get attention. But at the end of the day, what the person really wants is for someone to listen to them. They want someone to understand them. Personal experience, I did the same thing. So my story, very similar to Tiara's. I was in my freshman year of college, and at one point I just felt like I wanted to die, but I didn't know why. Everything was going fine for me. I was in college, I graduated with honors, and I was in the field that I wanted to be in, but I just felt bad. And I didn't understand why, so I didn't understand how I could tell people that I wanted help. And so a lot of my behaviors changed. I became withdrawn. I became isolated. I stopped talking to people, or I would talk to people for, a lot of time, like for a whole week, and then just stop talking to them. And a lot of people would say, oh, you're flaky, or, she's not a true friend, things like that. But in reality, I wanted someone to care. And that's what a lot of people want, that don't, again, understand how to really say it without saying it. They want people to understand. They want people to reach out. So yes, it can seem like a cry for attention, but it is a cry for attention.
And that's not a bad thing.
Exactly, it's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing
The
for
attention,
people that need that. Right?
exactly. We all need attention. We all need some sort of attention, whether it be just from friends, from family, just as human beings. We all need attention.
That's why babies cry in the crib, right?
Exactly, that's exactly
Hey,
right.
I need attention.
For attention, but that baby needs something, right? So when you say attention seeking, yes, it's attention seeking, but it's all about the type of attention, the type of support that you also can provide to that person that turns those behaviors into positives and really turns their life, whatever is going on with them, around to where they don't feel like they have to act out, so to speak, and these things can manifest themselves within them in much healthier ways.
For sure. And sometimes, like Logan, that can look like being withdrawn and not talking to people and not being social. With me, for instance, mine was the opposite. So I had a lot of risk-taking behavior. I would, go out, stay out all night, not go to sleep, experiment with alcohol and drugs and sex and, stealing things and breaking the law and whatever I could to try to make myself feel better, to try to get attention, right? And the attention that I got was negative. That meant like I got kicked out of school and I lost a bunch of friends and I got arrested and I went to jail and I got attention, but at the time no one was looking at that and saying, hey, this kid needs help. This kid needs someone to come alongside and not judge and not punish, but ask like, what's really going on here? What's the true root of this, So, it can, like Logan said, look a lot of different ways, but it's important to pay attention for those that we love, those that we care for. When we see those shifts, instead of just dismissing it and saying, oh, that's just, they're just a teenager, or that's just hormones, or that's just them being stupid or whatever. So take it seriously, right?
Absolutely.
John, can you share a little bit about your experience, your story, and what led you here today?
Yeah, so similar to them, freshman year was probably like the first time I realized I had any type of like problem, I guess you would say. There's no like really event I could knock down to, but second semester freshman year, I was going to my dream school, Ohio State, and second semester, I just noticed like I felt the same that I had like my whole life. And if you knew me in my life, I was really like a sad kid. A lot of the times crying. Like I was the crybaby cousin, the one cousin that nobody wants to be with. Get him out of here! Why you always crying? Like that was me, and I didn't know why. And I always thought like once I get out the house, once I change my situation, like I'll be fine. I'll be over this. Like this is what's happening right now. And not until that I got into college is when I realized like depression and like any type of mental issue is like a war. It's not like a battle. Um, it's something that you have to deal with your whole life. Once it comes into your life, it never goes away. You might be able to knock it out temporarily, but it's something that you have to learn how to control and how to deal with. And like I said, I realized this because I was at my dream school where I thought I needed to be, I was having a good time, but I realized like I still have this feeling of emptiness, this feeling of loneliness. And no matter what, I had to find like something within myself because an outside factor was not going to help that. It wasn't going to fix that. It wasn't going to make anything better. I had to find like love inside myself in order to fix it. And even now, like even a couple days ago, for the first time ever, like in my life, I was looking at a childhood picture. And I was like, man, like, I was not ugly. Like it sounds crazy to think, but like I used to never before like could look at a picture. Like I always thought I was ugly growing up. Never liked my self-image, and even like couldn't look back at stuff and be like, oh, like you look fine. But nowadays, I'm like, for the first time ever, like, oh man, you're fine. Like you look good. Like nobody can tell you anything about you. And I don't even know how to really explain it, but it was just the first time I felt like I loved myself, like in my life, And it was, like Tiara said, empowering. Like it felt very empowering. Like man, nobody at this point in my life, I don't think people can bring me down like they used to be able to do.
Right on that. I appreciate you sharing that. It's as a man. Traditionally, a display of emotion or asking for help. You mentioned the word crybaby. Like men aren't supposed to be that way, right? That's what we're taught. That's what it is exemplified in in Hollywood, right? But I believe that vulnerability is a strength. I think that is like what my therapist the other day asked me, like, how do you identify what's your gender? And I said, a man. And they were like, well, what does that mean to you? And first I said responsibility, because that's the first word that came to mind when I was like, what does being a man mean? Yeah. But then after that, I was like, but like, what am I responsible for? Right. I believe I'm responsible to show other people, show my future children that like it's okay to talk about these things. It's okay to be vulnerable. Right. It's okay to display emotion, and I can still be a manly man.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. And even a couple of days ago, I had to tell my friends, like, honestly, because me and Tiara were just talking about this when I walked in, our friend is missing. Mm-hmm. And, one of the dudes we grew up with, and I'm like, I need y'all to know that I love y'all, like y'all are important to me because this world is just too crazy. You never know what might happen. And like you said, that's just not stuff that men are, typically supposed to say to each other, like sit down and, I've tried to have those conversations in other group chats, and there's some people who be like, okay, I understand what you're feeling, love you too. And then there's other people who be like, be quiet. Why are you coming to us with this? That's just how it is. Yeah. So you just have to figure out, who's the support of who you could go to, and what works for you.
Yeah,
in your situation.
It's it. And just because someone else doesn't have the strength to be able to handle your emotions, mm-hmm. doesn't mean that you got to shut them down. It just means that maybe they aren't supposed to be part of your life, right? So we've all had experiences, and I imagine that some of you here have had some experiences with mental health, maybe suicide, things like that. And now I want to talk about what do we do, right? So we talked about some of the signs, we talked about some stories, but like, what do we do? What do we do if we find that that's happening for us, or if someone that we love, someone that we care about, we see that happening with them, right? So, maybe let's start with this. Is there something that someone did in any of your lives that you found helpful, that you found gave you that attention that you were looking for, gave you that branch, that extended you, that help, that hope that you were looking for?
Okay, so I'll go real quick. So Brandon Weaver was supposed to be here actually. So he is another friend that we grew up with, and like I said, when I was a kid, crying all the time. So some football stuff, somebody was probably joking around on me. I think I was crying or really sad, whatever. Me and Brandon used to hang, we were actually friends. So we would like actually hang out outside of football. And we were just talking, like asleep or whatever. And he's like, why do you care? Like, they say the same stuff about me, but I don't care. Like, I just don't believe it. Like, and I'm like, well, it's not that easy for me. But that conversation that day, even though it didn't happen right away, I still remember it now back in like 5th grade. And, it's something that I've allowed it to stick with me and like try to like remember that. Like, you can't care about these people who don't really affect you in any type of way. Especially if you don't allow them to, they can't affect you. So why should you care?
So he spoke to that and just acknowledged the fact that he had similar experiences. Right?
But he just didn't let it, he didn't allow it to affect him the way that I was allowed it to affect me.
Yeah. And that he gave you peer support, right? Just that act of recognizing, hey, I feel something similar. Even if it affects him differently, the fact that he kind of commiserated with you with that, that's peer support. So that was helpful.
Yeah.
Logan, Tiara?
For me, it was my best friend asking me, "Are you okay?" That's it. She was asking me if I was okay. Because she recognized that something was going wrong. Even to this day, she will ask me if I become isolative or withdrawn or stop talking to her for a couple of days. Are you okay? Because that means that whoever's asking that person cares. They want to know. And it's really important to know that you can tell people and you can talk to them, because if you don't talk to people and you don't tell them, you can't get the help that you need. So for me, it was just that simple, those 3 words. Are you okay? That kind of completely changed everything for me and my whole perspective on what was going on with me and how I can approach, when I have these periods of low mental wellness, asking myself, are you okay? That's okay too. Asking myself, are you okay? Because sometimes I don't know.
Yeah.
And you gotta be in tune with yourself before you can do anything else, really.
Yeah, I love that. Checking in with yourself and giving yourself that gift as well can be just as helpful, just as supportive.
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay.
For me, I would say it was finally when I was getting to the point where I could lean on the people around me. That lady right there, Martha Kim, and that lady right there, Kim King, when I had nothing to give. And they knew that, and I told them that I had no willpower, no nothing. And my mom, I remember her saying, "We're gonna get you through this. I just need you to work. I just need you, I would drag you if I had to. I just need you to be willing to be drugged." And that's really all I could do. They literally just dragged me to the finish line. I couldn't. I had nothing left in me. I didn't want to. I didn't know what to do, but I just leaned on them, and I knew that they had my best interest at heart, and I knew that they wanted to see me get better. So that's all I did. That's all I could do. But I was, to speak to what Logan had mentioned, my best friend as well.
And like I was really like, I'm a very private person, so I wasn't very open with like everything that was going on. I just kind of up and like disappeared from campus, and like I'm in a sorority, so they kind of were like, I don't want to say attacking me, but basically attacking me, like, you just up and left, like, what are you, like, you know? But my one best friend, she was like, where are you? Like, are you okay? What's going on? As opposed to, you just up and left campus without telling anybody, da 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 da. Like, little do y'all know, I am like fighting everything in my head right now. So just being like, asking, are you okay? As opposed to like jumping on people if like they don't go through on like a responsibility or something like that. I feel like it's another like thing that's really important, because when I would get those type of responses, I shut down. I'm not gonna tell you what I'm going through, but you can't even be sensitive from the jump. Like this conversation will not get anywhere if you can't just, come correct and don't attack me about it. You don't know what's been going on. So leaning on people around me and just being responsive when people can come correct. So, yeah.
I like that. And so that, I mean, it sounds like you had on one side people who were fighting for you, right? Who were not letting you go. And then you also had someone who was non-judgmental, who didn't make assumptions, gave you the benefit of the doubt, and checked in. And I think that's a good lesson for all of us. Like when we, encounter people in our lives who might be struggling, like, can we just pause and just take ourselves out of the equation instead of saying like, this is happening to me, or how is this affecting me, or this person is doing this to me, and just take that a little bit of space and just say, but what's going on with that? Why is this happening? Because we know like people generally aren't out to get us, they're not out to harm us or hurt us, right? So if we can give them that little bit of space to just suspend our disbelief and say, well, what's really going on? Why are they acting the way they're acting? And seeing, that behavior as maybe a request for support instead of an attack on us, right? My mom was a big part of my recovery journey as well. After my father died, she was just 26 years old when he died, and there were three little kids, three of us, and so she did everything she could to work to just try to keep us all together, and so she was very much, I think, in tune with the mental health. And so when she saw me really struggling and checking out of school and not connected with my friends, she literally like picked me up out of bed and was like, we're going to the doctor. And that was the first time I ever talked about, since I was 6 years old to when I was 16, we didn't talk about mental health. We didn't talk about the anxiety or the anger or anything that I was feeling, because we were just surviving, right? And that first time that my mom and I talked about it, and that first time that I talked about it with the doctor, to get a diagnosis of depression, it sounds weird, but it was like such a relief. It was just such a burden off of my shoulders to be able to like have this name to what I was experiencing, right? All right, I want to pause real quick. I'm going to check in on the chat. I just want to see if anyone at home has any questions. While we're doing that, does anyone here have questions? Anyone have any thoughts or anything that's popping up in their brains? Go ahead.
When you see it in someone, what is a safe tool to try to speak with them for them to recognize it? Because when it's my youngest son. And last year was a very hard year for me because I first thought that someone could have slipped him something. The hardest part was I had to sign my son in the hospital against his will. I thought he was going to be able to get some help, but at that moment, he had tested positive to COVID with no symptoms. We still don't really know if some of the things that I and my family was seeing in him was possibly due to COVID, but after the 2 weeks of being in the hospital and not really being treated for that, he was sent somewhere else, but then they said, oh, this is not the place for you. But his actions clearly speak that there's something, a cry for help. And sometimes it is masked with drinking. Other times it's living in the past, talking about all the things that he did so great. And because those things are not there anymore, you know, it's change. You get older, you lose a job, you quit a job, you do something different. But I have said, God bless you, I have said, hey, it's okay to talk to somebody. But in his mind, nothing is wrong. But to everybody else, he lives so much in the past that it's kind of hard to sometimes even have a conversation with him to get him to understand that's not reality when you are always talking about all the things you used to have, like as if they're present. And so I want to be able to know a safe place to give him some type of opinions on, or an avenue, so he feels safe to say maybe something is wrong.
First of all, thank you for sharing about that. And I'm sure it's very challenging for you to experience that as his mom and as someone who just loves him. And I'm sure that that's stressful for you and really challenging for you to navigate. So I just want to recognize you for that, and also just make sure you know that you need support too. That just by experiencing and going through what you're going through, whatever comes up for you and that support, like, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's okay. So I have a couple of thoughts, and like, if you and my mom could hang out, you'd have a conversation, and she would tell you some things about me, and some really challenging times that we had together. There's a couple like hard realities here. One is he may not be able to hear it from you. As much as you love him and as much as you care, you're his mom and he's your son, and sometimes we just can't hear it from the person that's maybe closest to us or that loves us the most. And it's like, that's a hard fact to face. And I'm not saying I don't know what your relationship is, so I'm not trying to say that that's the case, but just be, open to the fact that he may not be able to hear it from you. So that doesn't mean that you can't still help, that you can't still support, can't connect him to maybe someone he will listen to, right? So you have an opportunity for an indirect approach where maybe if he can't hear it from you, you can find someone who he can hear it from, or a source that he can hear it from, right? So I know with How old's your son?
32.
32. Okay. So a lot of young men. I'm going to say he's young because he's younger than me. So a lot of young men, we just have a hard time hearing it from moms, from maybe just women in general, or like maybe he doesn't want to open up because he's afraid he's going to hurt you, right?
Mhm.
So whatever the situation is, like sometimes like men do a better job, can absorb it better from other men, right? So maybe that's an avenue. Maybe that's a connection there. Sometimes it's professionals. I know for me, like my mom had a lot of like personal experiences with things, and that was like her journey. But for me, I was like, no, I want to hear it from this pro who went to school who like can tell me for real what's going on with me, and take themselves out of it. Outside of that initial time when my mom was trying to like actually just save my life, when a lot of times when she was trying to provide support for me, I felt like I had to try to take care of her too, right? So I'm the oldest, and like when my dad died, I just kind of assumed that role of like the man of the house, right? Even after she remarried, I still did that, and I always felt like I had to take care of her. I had to hold space for her emotions. So how can I put myself on her, right? So just perspectives from a son. I'm not saying that's the same situation, but maybe will help you see a different angle to maybe help him in a different way.
I agree. Thank you.
Some thoughts. I don't know if any of you had thoughts on that.
I'm not a professional at all, so I don't like give my opinion too much, but it just sounds like I have friends like that too, who all they do is talk about like the past, like when they were like who lived in high school or something like that. And it's just like I feel like every guy goes through that in someone because it's just like an insecurity about what you're going to do in the future. So I would just say if I don't know how you could, but if you could find any way to possibly just get his confidence up about what he could achieve in the future and what he could still be capable of. Because I think that's kind of like something I see in my older brother a little bit. Just like the way I see him talking sometimes, and I just want to tell him, like, bro, like, you're still great. Like, you can still do anything you want. Like, you're not even 30 yet. But, in his mind, I'm almost 30. So just whatever you can, and even if it's just little stuff like that, just try to build his confidence up slowly. That's what I think it is, from what I hear.
I appreciate that perspective. And as someone who's in my 40s and I see a couple of old gentlemen here, like I think you'll all probably agree with me that like life's just getting started. I'm like I hit 40 and I'm like I've had like 5 different careers by now, and I'm trying like all sorts of different things. I'm like, oh man, I still have like all this time and all this life. And I thought like when I was hitting 30 or getting close to 40, like I was like running out of time. And it's like, oh no, it's like there's still, of course we don't know anything about the future, but it's like there's so much to do, and we can reinvent ourselves so many times over. That goes for everybody. Yeah. We had a question on the chat. Kelly was asking about panic attacks and kind of what to do if you have a lot of panic attacks, if that kind of, is something that comes up a lot for you or you cycle through. Logan, I'm curious if you can speak to that a little bit. I know we've talked about panic attacks before. You have some experience?
Yes, so personally, what I like to do with panic attacks is focus on the things that are happening in the present. There's a lot of different ways that people call this, like the 5-4-3-2 method. You focus on 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can taste, 1 thing you can hear, things like that. That I think is my number 1 go-to to kind of bring yourself down and remember where you are. because obviously when you're in that state of panic, you can't concentrate on anything, but taking that time to just focus and say, okay, I can see these 5 chairs in front of me. I can see all of you guys in front of me. Grounding yourself, being where you are, that really is helpful in that moment.
I like that. So grounding techniques is what Logan's talking about.
Yes.
So engaging your senses, and that helps us to get out of our heads, helps us to get out of all of that, like you talked about, all those thoughts that are running through your head. Grounding ourselves in our body and those physical senses is a great way to do that. Anybody else want to share something around panic attacks?
I mean, I just try to breathe. When I like have an anxiety attack or like a panic attack, my breathing, like my heart starts beating really fast and my breathing turns to like, so I try to like slow my breathing down and like with intention, make my breaths longer and more drawn out, like I'm in a yoga class or something, and that kind of helps me a little bit.
I like that. Thoughts?
I've only had like one ever, so I don't really have many thoughts, except that it is real. Yeah, before I ever had one, I thought it sounded like the stupidest thing ever. Honestly, like I was like, no way, this is a real thing. Like, you don't just start freaking out and not know what you're doing. But that is exactly how it goes. You don't even know what's going on in the moment at all. So I would just say, just know that it's very real. Be patient with people and see them reacting in a way that you don't know how to explain at the moment.
I like that. I appreciate that. And Kelly, I just want to add one more perspective when it comes to panic attacks or anxiety. I've had a lot in my life. That's something I used to struggle with a lot. And I think grounding techniques are helpful. Having people acknowledge that it's real, being able to focus on our breath. For those of us who are like overthinkers or overanalyzers, one thing that really helps me to remember is that even though every time I have a panic attack, I feel like I'm gonna die, I haven't died from it yet. Not once. I've had hundreds of panic attacks in my life, and even though every time I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna die, I feel like my heart's gonna explode, or something horrible is gonna happen to me, I've never once died from it, and guess what? I'm not going to this time. So just that like logical reasoning for me is very helpful. Just remembering like, oh, okay, I've been here before, I've survived this before, I've done this before, I can do it again. I can get through this again. And that helps just kind of reorganize my thoughts and set my mind straight. There are some great programs out there that kind of dig into these techniques, and I would encourage you to do some research and find the approach that works for you. The cool thing about anxiety is that it's behavioral, and that we can learn techniques to be able to mitigate the symptoms and bring it down. So Kelly, feel free to send me a message, and I'll share some resources with you after too. All right, we're getting towards the end of our time, so I want to talk about your questions about kind of doing a mental wellness check-in and some approaches to be able to help keep ourselves mentally well. Do you have any thoughts, anything that works for you?
I kind of just wing it, to be honest. So I'll be learning from you guys as well. Like Logan had mentioned, sometimes I just ask me, like, I talk to myself a lot.
That's a sign of intelligence, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I just talk to myself. So like if I'm overwhelmed, I probably am talking to myself about the things that I'm overwhelmed about. Which I mean are obviously real already, but I just like put them in the air
I'm feeling this way right now. So, okay, I've acknowledged it and I deserve to acknowledge it. So now I can like try to fix it. But talking to myself helps me a lot because instead of just being in my head, I'm in the real world. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, when you speak to something, right, you validate it. And it no longer is just something that you are thinking about or wondering about or questioning, doubting whether or not it's valid.
Right.
When you speak to it, it has substance, right? And then you can take the next step of doing something about it. But sometimes just speaking to something is enough. Yeah. Thoughts about wellness check-in or approaches to wellness that are helpful?
My favorite thing to do is mood dialing with colors. I'm a very visual person. So if anyone here is a visual person, finds colors and organizing things helpful, what I do is every day or every night, whatever, I have a journal and I have a box for each day. And if I'm feeling sad, it's blue. If I'm feeling angry, it's red. If I'm feeling good, it's green. I have some other colors for in between, or I don't know how I feel today. And I will periodically, at least once a week, I try, or every couple of weeks, at least once a month, look at that and say, okay, I've been feeling overwhelmingly X, and try to figure out why. Because when you're in it day to day, it's really easy to forget, like, oh, I feel really bad. Because at that point, you're just surviving. And you're not even trying to think of how you're doing mentally. But when you have that concrete visual example at the end of whatever time period you choose, you can say, oh no, I wasn't feeling good. I was just surviving. But then you can start to look into why was I, why are all of my days blue? Why am I feeling sad all of these days? Or why am I feeling angry all of these days? I think those things are really helpful. Trying to take stock of, yourself and trying to get to know yourself a little better. And being patient with yourself when you do these things. Because you will see, not everything is going to be blue, not everything's going to be red, sometimes it will be green. And you can be patient with yourself and forgive yourself and say, look, I've had bad days, but I've also had good days. So how can I have more good days? Stuff like that.
I love that. I appreciate that. Similar to speaking to it, when you write something down, then it's real, it's documented, it's there. We can do this with journaling. I love the color coding on the days and just kind of documenting that like mood chart. Because then, you can compare it to what's going on in your life, what's going on in school, what's going on in work, what's going on in your personal relationships, what was I eating, how was I sleeping, and start to bring in these other factors. Because sometimes, it's the season, the year, winter's coming, right? And a lot of us get low energy in the winter. And, how can we look for ways to solve that? But if you can see that pattern, then you can take action on it. I like that. Any thoughts on wellness?
Just to not dwell on things too much, and just remain optimistic, because that's probably my biggest problem is I'll make things worse in my head than they are, and then whenever I look back on it, it's stressing out over it, didn't do anything. So it just doesn't help to just add extra burden to yourself. And just realize that most things aren't that serious, and that honestly, most things in life aren't that serious. Even you could look back at the stuff that's stressed you out most in your life, and if you look back at it, it's it doesn't even make sense how much I was worrying about that certain situation. So just don't dwell on anything too much.
Yeah. Worrying about something never fixed it, right? And that's the challenge, is to disrupt that thought. And there's lots of different ways that we can do that. I think, reaching out for help or for a conversation, working out, getting outside and taking a walk, or spending time with a pet or something like that. Those things can kind of disrupt that thinking and disrupt that worry. But also, I think reflection is really important, and to look, just like I was saying with the anxiety attacks, like to recognize, like, well, that's never killed me, right? And all that stuff that I was stressed about, all those tests, all those things that I thought, were going to be the end of me, as it turns out, I got through, and I'm stronger. And I think that's the important bit, is to remember that, like, every skill set, everything that we get through, we build our resilience, we build our ability, we build our knowledge base, whether that's in our head or in our bodies, of skill sets now that we can use to grow and to get, beyond the things that are struggling, or struggles for us. One thing that I'm hearing from a lot of this, like Logan, when you were talking about documenting stuff or reminding ourselves to, to speak to things, it sounds like a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work to do this. And as someone who does this work, both professionally and on myself, I can tell you, like, it is a lot of work, and it's worth it. It's always 100% worth it. Any investment that you make in yourself or in someone that you love, even if it doesn't look the way that you want it to look, it's still worth it. It's 100% worth it. And for anyone who is out there or in here who is struggling and feeling like they're not worth it, or that they might want to give up, or that they have no hope, I want to let you know that you may not be able to believe that you're worth it right now, but I believe it for you, and I know that these three people believe it for you, and there are other people out there that believe it for you. So please keep searching for answers, keep searching for solutions, and don't give up, because you can find a way. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to lie and say that it's going to be easy, but it is possible. And I promise what's on the other side is beautiful. Before we wrap up today, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your company and the work that you all are doing, because I think it's beautiful. When I read your mission statement, I was like, that's really great. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I want to share one more thing before I talk about
Yeah, please.
So I want to say that, like, being proactive with your mental health and your mental wellness is another thing that's, like, really important. Like, one thing that my therapist used to always tell me is, like, you don't want to wait until you're on your last, like, strike, or you don't want to wait till that point where one thing will just send you over the edge. You need to be consistently, like, looking at yourself, your wellness, and seeing, like, are you okay? Because you don't want to wait until it's too late. So if it's just, like, talking to yourself and doing these check-ins, or, like, ahead of a day that you think is going to be stressful. Like I mentioned, I had taken a semester off, so, like, my first day back to school, and, like, my next semester, before I, like, went on campus or anything, as I was getting ready, I stood in the mirror, I just had a conversation with myself. I said, you are capable, you will get through this day, it'll be perfect, amazing, blah, 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 you're gonna love your new school, all those things, just, like, setting that stuff up for myself. Not waiting until, like, the day's over and I already had a bad day, and then, like, crying in the mirror to myself, like, just starting my day off with these, like, good positive vibes. I feel like that helped me that day a lot, and I did have a good first day. I still remember it, my first day on Loyola. So yeah, just be proactive. But okay, BSW Cosmetics. BSW stands for Beauty Starts Within. We're located, stores just around the corner at 2050 Ridge Road. So Beauty Starts Within, myself along with my mother Kim King, who's back there, my cousin Latonya Tharp, who's back there, and then my aunt Katrina Brown, who is not here today. We started Beauty Starts Within, which is a Black-owned and family-owned
cosmetics and skincare store. So the whole reason for starting BSW, we kind of saw a untapped market for when it comes to like women of color and Black women in the beauty industry. If you look at like stats and everything, women of color make up a huge percentage of the consumers in beauty. However, most of the main like beauty houses do not like look to women of color as the forefront, kind of when they're designing the collections and everything, or more of an afterthought. So we kind of just saw this as an untapped market and an opportunity for us to kind of cater to those people who don't see themselves in the beauty industry or in the media, and just kind of uplift and praise those things that kind of set us apart and that people may have ridiculed us for in the past. I know when I was younger, like I used to wear my hair natural and puffballs, and this little girl one day was like, "What's wrong with your hair?" And I never wanted to wear my hair like that again. But now I love my natural hair. I wear it like that all the time. So like part of what BSW wants to do is just make everybody feel welcome, included, and like there's no one face of beauty or one like standard of beauty. Everybody is beautiful in their own way. Everybody has something different to offer that they bring to the table, and just like emphasizing that and making everybody feel comfortable. So BSW, from today, the 25th, through next Saturday, October 2nd, 20% of our sales from this week will go straight to NoStigmas, to help support mental wellness and provide mental wellness resources. 2050 Ridge Road, that's just around the corner.
In Homewood, Illinois.
Yes.
And for those who aren't local,
Yes, we have a website, bswcosmetics.com. Yes, website sales are included as well, 20% of all of our sales. So yeah, shop in store, shop online, with BSW Cosmetics, beauty starts within.
and I saw you even have some stuff for men on there.
Oh yeah, we do. We have a men's line. Yeah, good catch, Jake. I forgot about that. We've got men's cleansers. We've got lip balms that are obviously like unisex. We got a beard oil. There's only one left, so if you want that, you better grab it fast. But yeah, we got something for everybody, and then we're working on something for the kids too. BSW, we do makeovers there. So if you want a makeover, you can just give us a call, schedule it. We do skin consultations and makeover consultations for free. So I can kind of walk you through our products, find whatever works best for your skin individually. And then we're also working on, this is still in the works, but BSW is going to be doing some self-esteem workshops for girls. So there will be more information about that, but you can visit our website and join our newsletter, our email list to stay up to date with all things BSW.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you all for being here today, and everybody who has joined us virtually. Thanks for tuning in and being part of this. I love this conversation. I want to have more of these conversations, and I appreciate you all being open and vulnerable and sharing your stories. It's a beautiful, brave thing. So thank you all. Take care. We can hang out and talk more and answer any questions you have too.
No, I was wondering if I missed where you talked about NoStigmas.
Oh, I didn't talk about NoStigmas, but I can. So I guess I should probably do that. So NoStigmas, we're a peer-run organization. So people like me, Logan, who have lived experiences, we have a training program that teaches people how to be advocates for each other and for mental health in general. So all of our curriculum is available online on our website, and we do events like this where we will kind of have conversations, or people will share their story, their mental health story. We call them speak events, and been around since 2011, based out of Chicago. So, yeah. Yeah, I think at last count we have 85,000 people in our network online. We do in-person and virtual stuff. So yeah, all over the world. We got Lance hanging out in Italy, Go to bed, Lance. All right, thanks.
I would like to say one thing, to you guys, that for myself, on a positive note, what, I have adopted, as a statement for myself and for my friends and my family. I always say, tell yourself, I give myself permission. Give yourself permission to put you first and give yourself permission to love you.